so scared. I wish I had a ham sandwich to calm my nerves.
Yeah.
We gotta, find a place to hide. Where you going, fuzzy face?
Back to the 80s.
That's what I was afraid of. Oh, wait for me.
Take me back to the glory days. Back to the 80s. Oh, take me back, I wanna go. Back to the 80s. Take me back tonight. My pants are really tight. Whoa, the 80s were out of control. Back to the 80s. Take me back to the 80s.
Welcome back to the 80s radio show, everybody. We've been out for a couple weeks, or maybe a little more than that. We have been confronted by the Men in Black. You just don't want to know, and I don't want to tell you. And Chang, on his side, has been confronted by Sasquatch once again. But as I mentioned to you, the Chang, some say that his first mixtape was a cassette labeled Side A, but Side B was simply the sound of his mullet in the wind. He was once seen moonwalking out of a DeLorean and straight into a neon-lit roller disco back in 1987. Here at Back to the 80s, he is known as the master of synthwave, the high priest of hairspray, and he's still trying to figure out women. The one and only Chang.
Toscano. Your lies fill me with indigestion. We are in the University of Diversity continuing.
Today we have a great show for you because we have the fearless Jordan Rumsey from Can't Buy Me 80s. If you are on TikTok and on Instagram, Jordan is a living, walking 80s gal if we ever saw one. TikTok, it's at Can't Buy Me 80s. We're going to be talking with Jordan in a little while, so stick around. But in the meantime, I can tell you, you mentioned it, we're going to be talking about diversity in women in bands. So it's going to be a great program. Who do you think in 80s bands, female 80s bands, or it could be one singer, who do you think was the one with the music that you would listen to most?
Okay, that would be hands down Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders. You know, she's not like the sexy lady of Hollywood, but she's got sex appeal in the rock and roll. Fearless, has a voice like no other. Her sex appeal comes through her music, her lyrics, and her look when she performs. Not only that, an incredible band back in the 80s that she created. Sadly, both the guitar player and the bass player died from an overdose of drugs. After that, I mean, she had so many renditions, so many musicians coming in to fill the void, but yet couldn't get it together, but yet still maintained the badass sexiness, the raw guts of herself, which later on she finally found a band that would totally bring back the same vibe and feeling and sound of the original Pretenders. It's got to be Chrissie Hynde. Then my second would probably be Pat Benatar. That chick could wail. Her music, her vocals, her style, all of that became one sexy package. The other thing that was, she married Neil Giraldo, the lead guitar player. They were a force to be reckoned with. That totally awesome. I'd have to give it to Pat Benatar and the Pretenders for my most favorite female artists of the 1980s. Those chicks had looks and balls. That's all I can say.
My number one pick would definitely be the queen of pop. And I'm going to go with Madonna as number one, being the most influential vocalist of all the 80s and then beyond, setting the bar higher for artists to come and setting trends and fads and fashion statements for years to come. And of course, number two would be Whitney Houston. Breathtaking, powerful voice, flawless technique, capable of conveying the most profound emotions through music and sound. And then number three, it would have to be a toss-up between Laura Branigan and Joan Jett. Different genres, I understand. Laura Branigan, I really enjoyed. She had a unique vocal style, and it shone through. And fortunately, she passed away in '04, but she had some great dance tracks, some great ballads, and she was pretty versatile as well. And then Joan Jett, what are we going to say? I mean, she was pioneering female rocker, gritty voice, rebel attitude, shattering stereotypes, inspired by a generation of musicians that came before her. I mean, she proved that women could dominate the rock scene just as powerful as her male counterparts. So I would say those three.
Right. Yes. You cheated. Of course, you wanted to hog the mic, get more minutes.
Well, choose two more. That way we're even.
Impress your
Choose
domineering. I believe that it all started with the Queen of Pop. Okay. Now your wording was beautiful, but your wording for me is my testimony on what I think of Pat Benatar and Chrissy Hind. Because without Pat Benatar, there would be no Joan Jett. Without the Runaways, a mediocre girl band who caught no sex appeal till they got good management, split up, and decided to go sexy, did they get the recognition. I'm not saying they slept with anybody. I'm just saying somebody enhanced the booty, the boobies, and the makeup. All of a sudden, you have sexiness. But I will say I agree with you on Whitney Houston.
Oh, cool. Well, finally.
Whitney Houston, where do you even start? To me, Whitney Houston is right behind Aretha Franklin, Diana Ross, women of that caliber. I'd have to even say it goes back to, I would say Billie Holiday.
Now that's taking it back.
Magical, inspirational voices such as those of the past. Here's a woman in music that I think could fit that testimony.
Yeah.
But had a different style than all of what we're discussing. And I'm talking about Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Formerly married to David Stewart prior to the success. Continued to work with him, created great hits, a sound of her own, and capitalized on her fashion, her original beauty, her moving musical content, portraying it as a two-piece, but having the vocal range of a queen on a hill. You are getting rocked. Back to the 80s radio, Toscano and Jag style.
You're listening to Back to the 80s.
Back to the 80s radio, we followed up a solid rock block with the Bangles. And it's hazy shade, baby, of winter. That was Madonna, Like a Virgin. Oh, Lord. Who wasn't a virgin during that era of Madonna? Before that, we heard some Pretenders with Stop Your Sobbin'. We let it off with none other than Pat Benatar and All Fired Up. Classic songs, classic dynamic leading barbaric women of the 80s. We're talking about diversity. We're interviewing a girl that is fresh out of a 1980s high school.
She definitely encapsulates the entire 1980s. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, coming to you straight from the world of social media, straight from TikTok, Instagram, and more, Jordan Rumsey. She is the creative genius behind Can't Buy Me 80s. She serves up the perfect blend of retro vibes, modern day, everything with a dash of humor. And of course, she is channeling everything 80s with her look, her persona. So you got to buckle up, because when it comes to representing the 1980s, Jordan's got you covered. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is Jordan Rumsey.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I love the podcast. It's absolutely amazing. And yeah, my name is Jordan, and I'm 21 years old, and I create all 80s content, whether that's 80s inspired or authentic to the time period. And it's one of my all-time favorite things to do, and I like to give nostalgia to people. And then I also like to give nostalgia to people who didn't get to experience a decade, if that makes any sense.
Okay, now, Jordan, you're very young. So explain to us, how is it that the 80s made an impact on you, so now you're dressing like the 80s?
So I basically just grew up with 80s movies, 80s TV shows, and then the music. My family, when we used to always have board game night, we would just play 80s music all the time. And I really got drawn to it. And same with TV shows and movies. And, I would point out an actor that I really liked, and I would watch all of their stuff. And it would be basically from the 70s or the 80s. And it just became something that I really enjoyed, and I wanted to emulate that style. I wanted to emulate the hair, the clothes, the makeup, the entire thing of it. And that's where I am now.
Okay, now for those listening, Jordan is a living, walking representation of the 80s gal from head to toe. I mean, even the hair, it looks like Aquanet has made its way to your house, Jordan. Do they even have Aquanet anymore?
Well, they do have Aquanet, but they changed their formula, so now the main ingredient is water, and normally it's alcohol, and so it's
Yes, exactly. Water's going to flatten the hair out,
yes,
right? And alcohol is going to stimulate the hair, just like it does humans.
yes,
Yeah, I mean, come on, even your earrings scream 80s. What are those?
yes. These are my poison earrings from the band Poison.
Toscano's favorite band.
I actually like Poison, unlike others in this room, but Chang literally has an altar to Poison in his recording dojo.
Well, I met Brett, and he was very sweet. That's the only one I've met.
Now, Jordan, Toscano has that same outfit that you have on right now, but he's not wearing it. But meet and greets, he's worn it.
Oh, absolutely. How old were you, Jordan, when you started getting into the 80s fashion?
Oh, I was very young. I think I was probably like 13 when we first started getting into like the more tactical ones. And then when I first started like dressing 80s, I was a freshman in high school. So that was like what, 14? I think I would have been 14. Yeah.
So going back to your childhood, did your family raise you with 80s board games like Yahtzee and stuff?
Well, like I've been playing Yahtzee since I was like 8. I mean, and like Monopoly and like Manacala and all this stuff. More of like the actual board games that involve strategy, and the ones that are a little bit more hard, rather than the easy like Uno, Go Fish.
Oh yes, you guys played the family games very similar to the games that me and my wife would play with our girls, and fill their beautiful little ears with '80s music. So I commend your parents for doing such a great job and influence you with some of the greatest music of all time, the '80s.
Exactly.
Now, I got to say, ladies and gentlemen, you can't see her, but oh my goodness, go to her channel. You look exactly as they did back then. I mean, great job.
Thank you. All my clothes are all authentic from the 80s, so I try my best.
So how is it that you started with 80s fashion? Or did you say one day, I like their style? Or when was that?
I think really just growing up watching 80s movies and TV shows. So I'd be like, oh my gosh, I love the outfit this person's wearing. Let me try to go on to eBay and, search up an outfit similar to it. And I would always start with vintage outfits. And then I started watching more and more. Then like music videos, I'd be like, oh, I love that person's shirt. I love those jeans. I love those heels. And then I would try to find them, but I would try to find the vintage ones. And then it started out very gradual. And then now my entire wardrobe is all 80s, all vintage. Yeah. I mean, it's cheap. Like all these stores like Lululemon, or what are some of the other stores? Stanley or something. I don't know. They all have they're so expensive, like $70 leggings.
I'm sure there's also thrift stores around.
Yes, and thrift stores can get cheap, yeah.
What type of music of the '80s was played mostly at your house?
Yes, so growing up, my parents had to keep it appropriate, so we would mainly just listen to the pop part. But as I started to grow older, I started experiencing more glam or heavy metal, all the pretty boys. I started listening to them, and my dad would be like, hey, this is the type of music I grew up with. Here's some bands, here's some suggestions. I love heavy metal, glam metal, but I still have a soft spot for some regular pop.
What would be one of your favorite bands from the '80s?
Well, definitely Poison, Def Leppard. I love Motley Crue, Alice Cooper.
All right, so explain this to me. How did you get the idea for putting yourself out there in social media?
Yeah, so for the longest time, I dreaded TikTok. I kept telling my friends, and my friends from high school and middle school can tell you this, like brain rot, like all these different things. And then one time after I graduated, because I was really heavily bullied in high school, and I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna start social media. So then I started it when I just got out of high school, so it was that summer. And I was like, you know what? Let me try this. Let me see if this like sticks. And I just did it as fun. I started growing a following pretty fast. And then yeah, I decided let me do this as like a job. I think it's kind of cool. It's fun and it's awesome. And I do like live streams all the time too, and I like to connect with my fans that way as well. But it really hit home the first time that somebody came up to me and was like, "Oh my goodness, I follow you on like TikTok." Like that was like such a humbling experience. It was
Well,
awesome.
I mean, it looks like you're doing pretty well for yourself as far as your fan base. Are you doing this full time or part time? What are you doing? How does it work?
So I consider it as one of my part-time jobs, and I love to be transparent with everyone. So it started out me just doing it fun, and I still do it for fun, but there will be times where a brand is like, "Hey, can you promote this product?" and we'll give you a set amount of money for it. And depending if that product matches my brand or not, I'll say yes or no. Um, and then, so sometimes that will happen. And then if I do TikTok lives, that also garners in just a little bit. But all the money that I'm making as of currently is going straight towards my college tuition. So I'm trying to pay that off before I graduate. But yeah, it's like a part time job. It's cool.
Now, Jordan, seeing that you are a child of the 80s, have you noticed any of your followers or people that you meet are kind of gearing towards a lot of the 80s music and fashion? We've seen an incline on kids dressing 80s, rock shirts coming back, fashion coming back, certain glasses. I mean, like it's funny you mentioned Aquanet because you're starting to see some big hair, in some places.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people my age, now that there's TV shows that are coming out, which are like 80s themed, I feel like it is garnering the preteens or teenagers or even people in their early 20s. And I do see a lot of them dressing 80s, if not, they're dressing more 70s. I have a few friends that dress like 60s, 70s, and they're awesome. Um, but yeah, I think some 80s styles are coming back. I mean, some band shirts are coming back. Except a lot of people that I see, I'll never forget. Somebody was wearing like a Motley Crue shirt, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna make a new best friend. And I go up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love your shirt. I love Motley Crue. And they're like, oh yeah, it was just on sale at Walmart. And I was like, so you don't know Motley Crue? And they're like, no. And I'm like, shoot, I thought I would have had like a good friend there. Sometimes people who wear those shirts know the band, sometimes they don't. Um, but other than that, I think it's making a little bit of a comeback. Yeah.
Yeah, you see a lot of younger people today with 80s band shirts.
I don't go up, I'm not like, name 5 songs. I was just like, hey, like, I love your shirt. I love Motley Crue. And then they're like, oh, yeah, it was on sale. And I was like, oh, shoot.
Have you both noticed that you see a lot of artists that are in the entertainment business? You're seeing in the rock kind of wear fashions, but have no idea about the music or the band themselves.
Yes. And there's a few people, and I'm just like, that's kind of a letdown, Like, some of these people is like, oh, I could be good friends with them. And then I figure out we have nothing in common because they're just wearing this and they know nothing about it. Yeah, it's a little bit of a letdown, but I mean, it's okay. I have some friends online, so yeah, that know their stuff.
Were you dressing 80s all through high school, like since you were a freshman?
Yeah, I started dressing like it, but it was really like my senior year where my entire wardrobe was 80s.
All right, so back in the 1980s, school kids, no matter what grade they were in, when they were out of school, were loud, okay? I mean, screaming to the top of their lungs, especially when the school year ended. My kids in high school, in this new age, quiet as a nun's convent. Everyone on their phones, no one throwing books or folders or papers in the air. I mean, zombie quiet. And this is almost a 4,000 student public high school. How was it for you, being that, you were still in high school not too long ago?
Well, there was a lot of fights going on at my school. Um, so there was always somebody screaming. It was normally like, "You stole my man! I'm gonna come and beat you up!" And like you'll see piles of hair on the ground, like all the time. And I'm like,
Wow.
guys, I'm trying to get to class. So there was always like ruckus, always all this noise. I mean, a lot of people were on their phones, granted. Yeah, a lot of people were doing that. But so many times, like I'd be walking through the hallway, we're just trying to get to class. Um, but yeah, it's my high school was really loud, I think, very loud. And it's probably still loud now. I don't know. But there was the school was only supposed to fit like 1,500 kids, and there was over 2,500. So it was just really small, jam packed. But yeah, some people were on their phones, yeah, but there wasn't a lot of like genuine conversations going on, other than people that were fighting in the hallways in between classes.
All right, now this is important. How was it for you personally being so, well, let's say 80s? Differently dressed, I guess you could
Oh, it was
say.
awful. It was awful. I'll never forget, and I always wonder if the people that bully me, if I ever come up on their page. I always wonder. Um, but there was a time where these kids were throwing thumbtacks at me and my friend on the school bus. And the bus driver, bless her heart, I love her. She stopped the bus in the middle of the road and was like, "Y'all need to stop back there. Don't throw thumbtacks at her." So yeah, and I remember first and last names. So if I ever write a book, they better watch out. Um, but yeah, it was awful. People were bullying me left and right. I had hate pages made about me before I was even doing social media. I had a stalker was it junior year right before COVID. Um, Everything. It was awful. Like they would look at me like I was dressing completely different than everybody else, but yet they were the ones who were wearing their pants down to their knees. So it didn't make any sense.
In my opinion, I believe bullying has taken a bigger effect on our youth because of social media. Because children are not able to be free and go out and play amongst the neighborhoods like they used to. We have homeschooling now. Of course, COVID came, but that has really nothing to do with the epidemic of bullying itself. Now, Jordan, would you agree that some of those elements help cater to the feeding of the cancer in bullying?
I completely agree with you. That's the one thing about social media I don't like. Because at least if somebody's bullying you face to face, like, I got two fists, I can go like this if I need to. I can, stand up for myself. But when it's on social media and they're behind a fake name, you don't know who to look out for. You don't know who to avoid. You don't know who's watching you. And with the whole stalker incident, I got the local police involved. And the guy who worked at my school, he was a police officer, Officer Lilly. I loved him. He was amazing. And he reached out to Instagram and was like, "Hey, this is like a serious offense. It can like lead to suspension. Like we need to know who runs this account because they're threatening to follow this girl home, follow her school bus home." And all these things and like threatening to beat her up. And Instagram was like, "You know what? Because of our privacy policy, we cannot give you the name of the person who runs that account." So up until COVID hit, I was fearing for my life. I didn't know if somebody was following the school bus home. I didn't know who was watching me behind my back. I was scared to use the restroom. I had to get somebody from my classes to walk me there. And it's all because Instagram, they don't care if you get bullied. And I'm not afraid to say that. I don't care. Like, I would love to take them to court, honestly, because this happens all the time. And we see in our youth that so many kids who get cyberbullied, these social media platforms say, "Oh, we have a report button, report them." But they don't do anything about it. And I think it makes it so a lot of kids lose their lives because bullying becomes so severe. And these social media platforms are doing nothing to take care of it. And I always said if I have a really big platform, I'm going to speak out about it, and I have been. But it's awful. It's the way social media it basically condones bullying. So I'm not afraid to say that Instagram condones it. I'm not afraid to say that because it's true, and I think it's really affecting our youth.
Yeah, unlike in the 80s, today, kids don't have to stay quiet, and they shouldn't.
Yeah. So I definitely would say there are helplines there, people who will listen to you. Don't be afraid to get police involved, because your safety is all that matters. And definitely don't keep it in. Tell your friends, tell your family, speak to people, because just speaking about it helps more than just keeping it inside. And I feel like there's always help for everything, and you're never alone. Trust me, I've been there. You're never alone. Um, but yeah, just reach out, and it can definitely, you don't know how much talking to a friend can help you. I really think, like, if you are a parent, like, please, please raise your kids to have good values, have good morals. Raise them as if, like, hey, it's not good to pick on anybody. Treat people the way that you want to be treated. And I feel like that's one of the sentences that doesn't get out there enough is treat people the way you want to be treated. I mean, I'm a big believer in karma. I believe what you put into the world, you get back at some point. And there's no need to hurt anybody. Like, I don't understand where people find satisfaction in that. Because at the end of the day, it makes you a bad person. And who doesn't want to be a good person? I feel like everybody wants to be a good person, but to those who have these issues and it doesn't get resolved when they are kids, it can resolve in serious issues in their older life, whether that's, when they get married or when they're in high school. And I feel like we need to really start teaching kids at such a young age that it's not okay to do these things. And I feel like the people who don't get bullied, it's hard for them to understand how much it can affect somebody. Um, it's just their actions sometimes can lead to a child unaliving themselves. And I mean, I could never imagine somebody, just saying all these hurtful things and then it leads to something like that. I think it's awful. And I really do feel like we need to raise kids to be just nice and not be mean to people. If you want to say something mean, just keep it to yourself. You don't need to put that out into the world.
Now, are you currently in college right now or finishing up school or?
So I'm majoring in mass communications and it's a track in advertising, and I'm getting my minor in marketing. But I got my nursing done in high school, so I'm also a CNA.
All right. So now that we know that you are mainly on social media, what's your main platform or channel? Is it TikTok or Instagram?
Yes, that is my largest platform, but engagement over on Instagram is actually a little bit better. But yeah, TikTok is my main platform.
Okay, now for the juicy stuff. Do you have any big sponsors that you can talk to us about?
Oh, well, I recently did a partnership with AEG, and they invited me to go to the Def Leppard and Journey concert. And that was really fun, to do a partnership, and they're like, "Here's some tickets to the concert." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." Like, that was awesome. I recently am going to be part of a 80s TV show called Small Town Outsiders, and we're filming next year. And they found me through TikTok and was like, "Hey, do you want to audition for this role?" And I said, "Of course I did." And I got it. And then we did the table read, amazing cast. And so that's really cool, like, to make my acting debut next year.
Now, oddly enough, Jordan, I was going to ask you this. If maybe you thought about going into acting before you mentioned you were going to go into the medical profession, on which I commend you, somebody of your age. Obviously, you were raised from people of the 80s. You have a lot of compassion and care, but you do know how to feed to a camera, almost like the camera is a person. And
Yes,
I
and
think you have that it quality, so I commend you on that.
thank you. I love being under pressure. I love thinking on the spot. You just come up with the things right there. And it's, you're staying true to your authentic self. And I really love that. So I'm excited that for acting, it's going to be like a script. I'm really excited for that. But mainly, I might be doing my own hair, makeup, clothes, and everything, because it's set in the 80s. So I'm kind of will still be playing sort of myself. But yeah, I love just talking to the camera, talking to people like live. it's hard for me to script things, if that makes any sense.
So what do your parents think about all of this for you?
At first, they didn't like it. I think they thought it was like, oh, this is a little bit like weird. Like they see myself as them. But then now my mom is like, if anybody asks, tell them that you do your hair better than I ever did. But I prefer to differ because she did have really good hair in the 80s. But yeah, they have grown to accept it. They've grown to accept that it's like a part-time job, basically. And that I just dress like this every day and I have fun with it. So they've grown to accept it over the past like 5-7 years.
How do you dress when you go out?
Well, whenever I get like a new outfit, I love to wear it every single day. It's crazy. But to the mall, it has to be acid wash jeans and like a pastel shirt or a dress. And then if I'm going out to like a concert, like a heavy metal concert or glam, I try to dress up like that. I recently went to the Def Leppard concert and I bought a Def Leppard outfit from Etsy. And, it's just been amazing. And so there's certain things that when I go certain places, I'm like, I know the exact outfit I'm going to wear for that.
We're talking with Jordan Rumsey of Can't Buy Me 80s on TikTok and Instagram. Look her up as we take a quick break. We're going to be right back on Back to the 80s Radio. You probably don't know how much words can hurt, but cyberbullying is real. Whether it's in person or behind the screen, just a comment or an unnecessary share, words can hurt us all. Words can affect lives. Words can even end lives. This message has been brought to you by your friends that care at the 80s Cruise. Go to the80scruise.com for more information.
If it's popular, we do it. Totally awesome.
And now, back to the 80s with Toscano and Chang.
Welcome back to the 80s, where you got nothing but the 80s, and you got Miss Jordan from Can't Buy Me 80s. Have you ever felt the desire to be a wanna Madonna and go out and dress like Madonna?
I definitely would, but I would not be able to rock it. I would not be able to. She can rock that style. I definitely could not. I think, and also it's a lot of pieces to add together, a lot of layering. I don't know how to do that.
Now, do you see yourself doing this for a long time?
I don't know. Definitely acting, a little bit more acting down the line. I hope that social media lasts at least another year or two. I think that would be really fun. And I always say, I go every single day. I see what happens. And yeah, so I don't know. I think just the one thing is, Small Town Outsiders season 2. Super excited for that. And then we'll see what else happens,
All right, now let me ask you this as sort of a fun way to finish the night. If you could get into a real DeLorean, I don't know if you have or not, but if it was a real DeLorean time machine, what year in the 1980s would you travel to?
Well, I have sat in 2 DeLoreans before. That was really cool. People liked my outfit and they're like, you want to sit in the DeLorean? I'm like, I'd be honored. Oh my gosh, I love DeLoreans. But if one actually worked and Marty and Doc were in the car, because Michael J. Fox is one of my husbands, I would travel back to 1986. I think 86 had a lot of really good albums and movies that came out, especially that's when the hair started to get a little bit more like big and like curly and stuff, which I really love. Just 86, I think that's like a peak year for everything. And I would probably stay 21. And I'd go on like the Sunset Strip and everything. That'd be really fun.
All right, Jordan, tell everybody around the world, where can they check your content out?
Thank you. Yeah, it's Instagram is Can't Buy Me 80s with an underscore at the end, and then TikTok is Can't Buy Me 80s, and so it's like Can't Buy Me Love, but Can't Buy Me 80s. Yes, and that's my only accounts. There's people impersonating me, so watch out. Those are my only accounts. Instagram's verified, TikTok's not, and it should be verified. And then TikTok is just regular Can't Buy Me 80s. No extra S, no nothing. Just that.
Awesome. Just awesome, Jordan. We want to wish you nothing but the very best in your TikTok, Instagram, and beyond adventures. Can't wait to see more of your awesome content on social media. We had a ball having you on, so we appreciate you taking the time to be with us here on Back to the 80s Radio with Toscano and Chang.
Thank Thank you. And I wish nothing but the best for you guys, too. Thank you so much for having me. I had a good time.
Now, it is customary here on Back to the 80s that when you're a guest, as we finish the interview, you get to play any song you want from the 1980s. So what are you going to be putting on for everybody?
Okay, I will be putting on Women by Def Leppard.
Thanks, Jordan, for that request. You know, Chang, as we head off to a great week, we promise you guys that we have another incredible interview the following week. So stay tuned because we have an author. Whatever you're doing, you don't want to miss Back to the 80s next week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you because, you know, you stick around with Back to the 80s. And I do also want to remind you guys that if you want to leave us a note, go ahead and do so at the number 2, the 80s radio at gmail.com. Also hit us up on our social media. As Chang always says, it's a lot of fun talking to you guys there. And thank you for all the wonderful reviews that you give us through social media as well. It does help. If you want to help out the show, we do have a Patreon, of course, channel called Back to the 80s Radio. And also, when you want to tune in to 24/7 radio, like we did back in the 80s, go ahead and search the live365.com app and search for Back to the 80s Radio. You have to have the word radio there. On behalf of myself, Toscano, I'm wishing you the best week ever, and I look forward to talking with you again about everything 80s.
Shaggy baby here. I remind you all to stand strong, stand tall. Don't let nothing get you down. I bid you all an aho, adios, arrivederci, sayonara, bon voyage, hasta la vista, hasta mañana, and to all my homies all across this listener land, an orale.
Take me back.